Good morning, everyone, and you're all very welcome to this morning's webinar, where we will be talking about application modernization and why now is the right time to look at it. In terms of agenda for the session, I'm delighted to say we're joined by Dennis Cadigan, Head of IT at CPAS, who are the professional pensions administration company. And Dennis will bring a customer's voice and talk around CPAS's journey with application modernization. We're also joined by Brendan Dunleavy, who is Ergo's Director of Digital Practice, who will talk through some customer success stories and Ergo's approach to app modernization. We're happy to take any questions you may have. There's a Q&A function in the window that you can submit questions to, and we'll take a look at the end of the session. So before we hear from Dennis and Brendan, I'm Coleman Burke, the Digital Business Development Manager here at Ergo, and I'm going to introduce you to Ergo and look at what application modernization is and what the key drivers for it are. As some of you may know, Ergo is a cloud managed service provider. We're about 400 people, all passionate about IT. We've been delivering application modernization service for about 20 years now. We have 5 key areas of excellence in the organization across cloud, modern workplace, business applications, print and document services, and strategic IT resourcing. All of these are underpinned by our strategic service pillars that include security, IT service management, software development, adoption and change management, infrastructure, data and analytics, and software licensing, all of which play a key part in application modernization journeys. Over the past number of years, it's fair to say I've seen a welcoming shift in how we engage with customers when we talk about app modernization. The dial is firmly moved from purely having an IT conversation to having a more business-led conversation supported by strong adoption change management initiatives, which is the key ingredients for success. So what is application modernization? You see a definition here from Gartner, but in essence, application modernization is taking legacy or monolithic applications to a new platform, typically in the cloud, and taking advantages of services that that new cloud platform offers. Brendan will talk further on the different options available when considering transformations later on in the session. So why is app modernization important? As we know, everything has a shelf life. Music, phones, and especially company applications. So some people might still be using the lovely green screen experience, but essentially it's known now as a legacy app. Legacy app characteristics are usually apps that are out of date and misaligned with organizations' goals and objectives. For some organizations, symptoms of legacy applications might also include slow processing. So you have your long page loads in applications, data not saving correctly. You might find that your overnight backups are failing or not finishing in time for the next day's workload. You might have application crashes. You might have issues around access, user or customer feature demands start exceeding the current application scope. All symptoms of legacy applications. And ultimately, if the total cost of ownership is too high, the technology is too complex, or security, compliance, support, or scalability are being compromised, then it's really time to start thinking about modernizing. Now, let's have a look at some of the drivers behind app modernization. So there are many drivers, but here are a few that people come to us when they want us to solve legacy app challenges. Some come in a planned, strategic manner, and others come in reaction to a compelling event. So let's take a look. We have business coming demanding new features faster. So real digital transformation requests. customer employees experience now, or UX as you might commonly see it being referred to, are becoming more and more prevalent. A slick experience is just expected. Self-service portals, intuitive solutions, omni-channel experiences, seamless onboarding experiences and portals are quite a common ask from our customers. Dennis will talk shortly about how business demands and how CPaaS have responded and delivered to those ongoing driving business demands, which I think you'll find interesting. But just to put a little bit of context on these business demands, there was a recent survey undertaken by an organization called Clever Road, and they identified some really interesting findings. So 31% of software is currently not meeting employees' needs. 38% is quoted as having high maintenance costs to keep the lights on with the legacy applications, and 56% said there was no integrations at all with other technologies or other line of business applications in the organization. So that's massive. Another key driver is rapid response to changing business landscapes. So speed to market can be critical to provide organizations with first mover advantage. So you're thinking about your competitors offering more advanced features, maybe in the advanced analytics and the artificial intelligence or machine learning space. And you need to be sure your apps that you have are serving your emerging and future business needs. You need to ask what impact will industry changes have on the application. So obviously, everybody has seen the impact COVID-19 has had, and some organizations have adopted digital transformation at an unprecedented rate. So little pop quiz for you. I'll let you answer to yourselves, but have a guess at what the number one Apple app that was most downloaded in 2020 was. So it's not TikTok or WhatsApp or any of those ones, but it's actually Zoom. So that's an interesting advancement around application modernization, the rapid change to responding changing business landscape, and factors like these have led to organizations, ramping up the migration to modern infrastructure, their advanced legacy systems and applications. Another common driver to look at application modernization is around key person dependencies. So we've all seen it. Common scenario is hearing about one person who holds all the knowledge around an application. You can't touch the application. No one knows enough about it. It turns out to be an actual critical business application. There might be a server sitting in the corner or under a desk that everyone is afraid to touch in case they break it. And ultimately what you want to do there is you want to decrease the risk around that. Spread the tacit knowledge that exists with that key person dependency in those particular scenarios, and remove all that manual effort now and allow your employees to focus on higher value activities. And we've seen that to be a real strong driver in promoting employee retention also. Another key driver is around a lack of available business insights. Typical scenario is a lot of applications sitting inside an organization and key valuable data locked inside those applications. So by unlocking that, it can provide real immediate access to data to speed up and improve decision making. That's critical in this day and age. Another key driver is data center contracts expiring. So typically at this point, businesses will assess the best move for the organization to renew in that existing data center or to look to achieve efficiencies by moving to the cloud. They may look to redeploy to cloud, and sometimes they can realize benefits from total cost of ownership by moving to the cloud. Another driver is urgent capacity needs. So having that flexibility and elasticity of the cloud to scale up or scale down a solution at busy periods of time is critical. So as an example, in Ergo, we have a number of customers who run season trade shows, and they need that extra power behind their applications at those particular points. So they scale up all the cloud resources before the trade show and scale it back down after the trade show once the capacity has been met. So that's another key driver to looking to modernize your application to deliver for those urgent capacity needs. Another driver is around software hardware refresh or consolidation. So strategic review of software internally typically happens. And what you want to avoid is any new applications you have becoming the legacy applications of the future. So by looking at your current legacy applications, you want to ask yourself questions around what would happen if this application stopped running altogether? How important is this app to my organization? So they're key questions that will help drive the conversation around identifying if you should be modernizing your applications or not. Similarly, as software reach ends of life for support, it's another strategic, compelling event to evaluate a way forward. By keeping legacy applications running smoothly can be time-consuming, resource-intensive process. So it's definitely one for consideration. And the trick here is to move these legacy or monolith applications to the cloud, but do it in an agile or iterative way, which ends up creating new business value from existing applications. A real common and important driver is also around security threats. So we engage more with our customers now on security than we've ever done. We carry out a lot of pen tests. We commonly see a lot of challenges with our customers around data security protocols. And to back this up, a startling finding from PwC recently discovered that 51% of 70 organizations who were surveyed in Ireland have said that they have experienced fraud in the past 2 years. So that's massive. That's a huge driver in all of our modernization conversations we're having currently with customers. Other drivers would include compliance and regulatory obligations. So becoming more and more of a requirement. We've seen it especially since the introduction of GDPR. More so recently then with the likes of PSD2 regulations that have been introduced, and that's a real driver around the conversation for modernizing. And finally, it's about enabling new business opportunities. So identifying how you can drive new revenue streams or reduce costs, how you can redeploy some of that budget from simply keeping the lights on existing applications to driving higher business value. So what plans exist for the organization, and how are you going to align those application strategies to deliver on those? So that's just a couple of key drivers as to why some organizations look at modernizing their applications. I've seen it down through the years that the best approach around modernization opportunities come when multiple drivers come from the business and IT. It's really about assessing those drivers and choosing the right approach that has the maximum effect and business value. So with that, I'll hand you over to Dennis. He will talk to us about what application modernization means from a CPaaS perspective. And I'll pass you over to Dennis now. Thank you.
Thanks, Coleman. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dennis Cadigan. I'm the head of IT for CPaaS. Just to say, Coleman, a lot of the stuff you mentioned there does ring home for us, and hopefully in my presentation I'll talk around being able to ground some of that in our reality. So just to tell you a little bit about CPaaS before I talk about the IT, we're a pension administration company. We manage pensions on behalf of the construction sector, two major pension schemes, the CWPS scheme and the SARE scheme. We also do financial planning for the sector in the form of milestone advisory, and there's a number of other schemes, the Sick Pay Trust and the Industry Retirement Fund for self-employed in the sector. So there's a group of companies there, and I suppose it's important to say that IT is critical to the running of those companies. It's involved in all aspects of the administration. I suppose we're the largest private sector pension fund in Ireland. We're a master trust, and we We have 2.5 billion under investment under both the pension schemes. So it's a significant ask for the IT to make sure that that's all administered securely and done correctly. We have a good portion of the construction sector, and we've probably about 98% of the main contractors and subcontractors, and we would have a lot of the top 50 construction companies within Ireland as well. And we've recently expanded into kind of related services of the construction sector as well, as auto enrolment fast approaches Ireland. So that's, I suppose, just a little bit of background there on that. We've also been recognised for a number of pension awards over the last decade, from best investment strategy to trustee boards and best communication strategy and risk management, and over the last few years as well, some European pension awards back in 2018 and more recently in 2020. So look, that's the little piece about CPaaS. In terms of the IT and application modernisation, well, I suppose this slide really kind of shows what was important for us as we went on our journey. Just to give you a bit of background, back in 2016, we lost our long-term technology partner. They decided to get out of this business and go into a completely different business. So we found ourselves looking for a new technology partner that could support our systems. And the challenge for us was that we use quite bespoke systems for our pension administration. So they were non-standard. They'd been built up over the last 10 years, and our customers, i.e. our employers and our members, interacted with those systems. And all our technology was in-house. Being financial services, we kind of took a conservative approach. Our systems are in-house, everything is on premises, even our portals are in-house on our own servers. So we needed to find a technology partner that could initially support those quite complicated systems, but would be willing to get to know them, learn the tacit knowledge, and then go on a journey with us in terms of modernization, looking at how we could make those systems better as we went forward. And really, we went through a big tender process. We looked at 6 or 7 companies, and Ergo won that tender. And I suppose it was then we began to look at the application modernization. And I'll talk about one of the ones we did a couple of years back with Ergo as I move along the slides, which was our joining portal. But really, I suppose automation was key for us because we wanted to look at ensuring the business was the key driver. Too often, I suppose, IT can come in and try to drive these projects, and we felt that the business needed to be the catalyst for change. And I suppose all change comes from the processes you're using and how you can make those processes leaner, make them more modern, and then use applications to automate them. So that was a key part. And then for us, controls were important because we have a lot of automation. We need to be able to do checks and balances. We get audited a lot. So as we look to automate, we wanted to make sure that those kind of requirements were met as part of that automation and digitization. And we wanted to make sure that our tacit knowledge wasn't lost. And that was an important part with Ergo, the willingness to get to know our business, get to know how we operate, how the pension systems work, and all the various actuary requirements and things like that. So it wasn't enough for them to just come in and sell us applications and sell us things. They needed to come in and get to know us, get to know our business, help us with our processes, and in that way they'd be more successful in being able to help us go on this journey. So I suppose this slide really just talks about back in 2018, we had in the construction sector an SEO came into play, which was a sectoral employment order, and it was agreement between government unions and the sector to pay into people's pensions at an agreed rate. So that came upon us quite fast, and up to then, since the recession of 2008, the joining process was essentially manual, paper-based, and took quite a long time to do. And we wanted to be able to automate that. So we went from no application in that scenario to an automated application. And over that period, we went from 20,000 members, and we expected it to grow to about 40,000 members quite quickly. We needed to be able to do something fast. So the kind of approach we took was to not just go off ourselves and try to figure out our requirements and then go to Ergo and say, you know, can you do this for us? We brought them in for that phase because we figured it would put manners on the process. They would do it quicker, and their tacit knowledge of their end of the partnership, which is all the technology, whether it's Azure and all the solutions, that when we were reworking the processes and figuring out how we could automate them in our requirement stage, that just would happen quicker, and their know-how would kind of be able to make that faster and say, well, we can do that here, we can do that there, this technology can help with that. So that's how we did it. And then step 2 was the build. And in this example of the portal we're going to be talking about, we built it in an Azure environment. And there was a number of different kind of parts to that had to work for us, so we could administer things quite quickly. And it was important that we didn't just put it up in Azure without thinking about our compliance needs, the security needs, GDPR, and the various audits we'd have to do. So it was that piece that Ergo also brought to it, in terms of that we were thinking not just an application, but all the software requirements around it as well. Yeah, and I suppose we've been in partnership for the last nearly 5 years at this point, so things have been going well. If you want to jump on to the next one there, Coleman, I'll just talk about the application. So this was our joining portal. So essentially what this allows us to do now that it's developed, it's an application, but there's 2 parts to it. There's the front end application that our members use, and then there's the back end administrative application, and it steps through a number of stages and processes. Joining up to a pension scheme can be a little bit complicated, and these are employers who are joining up themselves and all their employees. And the unique thing about our pension scheme is the money follows, the pot follows the person. So a person working with one company on one site one week can be working with a different company on a different site the next week. And so there has to be that flexibility built into our joining process. So it takes them through a number of different steps. There's a lot of if-thens and customized screens and things like that. So, and then if you go to the back end on the next slide, Coleman, you'll see that in the back end, we're able to administer who's come on board, where that application is at, and in various stages that it goes through. And I just put up a slide beside it because one of the key things for us was making sure that for the first time we were really putting some of our information up in the cloud. And this is financial pension information, so we were concerned that it wouldn't be secure and how to make sure that happened. And that was a key piece Ergo brought to it in the initial planning stages, around looking at the various parts of this application, the on-site databases and where your stuff currently sits, the web area where temporary databases, API integration, and how that's all kept secure. So that was really important at the early stages for us to feel this was going to be secure, it was going to work, and all those various kind of cyber threats were thought about and dealt with up front before we ever built anything. So that just said I'd show that up as well. If you want to move on there, Coleman. And then I suppose, was this a success for us? Well, I suppose these slides speak for itself. Up to this point, it was a completely manual process. And speaking to the person who deals with this stuff day to day, if we take an application of 5 people joining up to the pension scheme, we've saved at least 50% of the time in that application process, because it's all been automated and it goes directly from the portal into our pension application. There's still a little bit of due diligence that's done around pensions. There's deed of adherences and things like that you can't automate, but in the majority it's been automated. But then as that scales up to larger companies coming in, 100 people joining, it's just exponentially quicker in terms of that. It's so much faster that people can join up. So that was a real win for us, that the speed to joining up just became so much quicker, and it enabled us to keep the one person we had working on that to one person part-time, even though the throughput over those years went up 4 times. So that's an important thing to say. And right away when it went live, another indication of the success and the way we did it was that people took it up straight away. 98% of people joining went through the portal, and we went from 26,000 members to 45,000 members when that portal went live. So it was a really successful project. The system never failed us. In fact, we never went near it after that till just this year, when we were expanding our services and we needed to make some changes for a different type of joiner, and kind of created a customized portal for them in that. So yeah, in terms of the business outcomes, it's been a complete success. And that's another part of how we handled this. We weren't just thinking from an IT point of view, how do we make this more modern, or how do we take something that's manual and make it automated? It really had to deliver for the business, and those delivery pieces were outlined right at the start as we went along with Ergo. So yeah, that's a couple of the pieces around the business outcome. And then I suppose just to talk a little bit about Ergo and to continue why we went with Ergo. I suppose the concern at the start was that this pension application systems we have are very bespoke, but Ergo really kind of stepped in and got to know those systems quite quick and were able to support it. And they clearly understood for us the importance of our systems and being able to modernize those systems and take all the bespoke applications we had in-house that were getting quite old at this stage. Some of our portals 10 years old. We would have had some security concerns around that, to be able to modernize and make those more user-friendly and more customer-focused. So they really jumped in to learn our systems and our pension environment before they could really help us. So that was a key piece, that kind of tacit knowledge and their project approach. And yeah, in terms of a partnership approach, that's, I think, really strong with Ergo. It always feels to me like our successes and our projects are their successes, and that's worked well so far. And we're able to have the conversations and sit down and discuss whatever we need to do. We meet quite regularly on a monthly basis, and then on a quarterly basis we'll meet with them to discuss strategic stuff. And while we're focused on the business, they're pushing us along with the technologies and coming up with new ideas and telling us what's available and what's out there. The most recent project we're currently working on now is a case of when we're looking at how to modernize processes in a different part of the business, but also, instead of having workflows separate, to integrate those workflows within the application and within the process itself, taking advantage of all the features in Azure. So just a little bit about that. And again, I think I've mentioned the tacit knowledge, that was a really important piece for us. And in the application development and the work they've done for us, they've never brought us down a cul-de-sac. So they future-proofed what they've done for us. Because this project was such a success, the next project now will more than likely end up in Azure in the same environment. And for us then, that deals with compliance, cybersecurity, if we need two-factor logon. And as through the pandemic, staff working from home now, that allowed that process to continue seamlessly, because it was all done online through portals, so people could administer it and apply remotely, which in the past people would have had to be on site to do all that. So that kind of thinking around corners for us and future proofing has been a key piece for us in our dealings with Ergo. And then I suppose just in summary, and this is the intangible piece, for us they were a good cultural fit. It feels like they're accessible, they're just down the road, they'll meet with you obviously post-pandemic around the table for a cup of tea, and more recently online. So yeah, I suppose that's a summary of why how Ergo has helped us over the period of the last number of years. So that's CPAS's story, and I hope that's been a help to people, and I'm happy to answer questions or have a chat later on. Back to you. I think it's over to you, Brendan, is it?
That's great. Thanks a lot, Dennis. That was really good. So Brendan Levy's my name. So I'm the director of the digital practice. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how in practice we work through modernizing apps and some of the options we take, and taking some real world customer examples in addition to Dennis's, to just walk you through and make it more real. So Coleman, I'm just going to request control here. So just really to summarize our approach to application modernization. Really, we want to assess the current state of the application estate. What are the challenges and opportunities you have? And as Dennis alluded to earlier, this is very much has to be a business-driven initiative. So, but you need to look twin track. You need to look at, okay, what is the business looking to achieve? What is the current technology allowing you to achieve? What is it not? What are the pain points? And then also look from a technology perspective. So, within the IT function, or within the CIO or CTO function, what is the plan around cloud? What are you trying to do? We would have some larger multinational customers who will have defined KPIs from central HQ to make a certain percentage of their applications deployed to the cloud. You have other cases then where it's driven more from a business perspective. You need to look at the needs. Perhaps the applications that they currently have are not able to meet the ongoing evolving needs of the business, to some of the points Coleman alluded to earlier on. So you're taking a twin track approach. Typically then we would bring both sides in. We would facilitate that to a high degree, with both business and technology. What is it you're looking to do? What is your current applications? What is your needs? And then we'd look at modernization options and trade-offs. So taking the set of applications and taking the set of infrastructure and assets you have, mapping them to the business needs and figuring out what you need to go, what you need, and how's the best way to get there from a app modernization perspective. So we'll talk somewhat more around these different options further down the line. But then the final point then is around planning that modernization journey. So you need to consider your roadmap versus a single project. In some cases, we'll have customers where the initial application or the value for cloud is potentially seen for example, by the IT function, and they need to make a business case for further investment. So they will initiate to perhaps take a small project, deploy that to the cloud, to prove out, to learn from that, to take a lot of the unknowns, to give assurances from a security perspective to the organization, and from there then bring back to build a business case to do a larger piece of work. So just move on there. Okay, we've got it now. So really, we're talking about five primary options as regards modernizing applications. So call it the 5 R's. So looking at the first 4, really there's a continuum of both complexity and effort to do these, but as well as that, in return, you're also getting increased capabilities and payback from the cloud. So there's no right or wrong or appropriate answer here. It is going to be very much determined on a case-by-case basis. What are your needs? What's your current application do, and where do you need it to go? So just moving from left to right. So rehost. So this is the classic lift and shift. You've got an existing application. It's on-prem. Maybe you have the source code. Maybe you don't. It's functioning as you need it. You can lift and shift that, and you deploy that essentially on a VM within the cloud environment. Just moving that on a level, then we talk about refactoring. So this is where we're going to make minimal code changes. So it may be a case that you need to change. There's a hard-coded URL, and there's a small change you need to make. So in order to point to a new database in the cloud, using this approach, you can take advantage of basic PaaS functionality, like for example, managed databases. So rather than going with an on-prem database, you can take for example, in typically in Azure, where we've got Cosmos DB or Azure SQL Server as our typical solutions there. And then the third element here is around Devops. So by Devops, what we're primarily meaning there is automating that process of building the application and deploying it to the cloud. Re-architecting then, so this is where we're doing more significant changes to the application. So rather than just making minor changes, perhaps we're breaking what was a monolithic application into a number of sub-services and modules and components. And then by doing that, it allows us to take advantage again of more of the cloud facilities. So whether that's using serverless and using other more cloud native capabilities is there. Rebuild then, so that's where we're taking an existing legacy application and determinations are made that really it's outlived its usefulness, or the application doesn't really meet the current needs. So you're doing a full rewrite of the application with the cloud capabilities in mind. So you're architecting it from the perspective of how can we push as much responsibility as possible over to the cloud. So we're managing an application rather than having to manage infrastructure and lower level needs. And then the final one here, replace. So this is where you've got an existing application, you've built it and supported in-house, but maybe that application's 10, 15 years old. The market has moved on, and there's actually an application off the shelf that you can purchase, which meets your needs or matches a significant chunk of that. So you're essentially going in and replacing with some other SaaS solution. So they're essentially the 5 key, we'll call the 5 R's. So I'm just going to dive through some of these options and then just give some of the customer examples we've experienced with these. So rehost. So again, when we talk, this is really the lift and shift. So when would you do this? Well, perhaps your your current data center contract is expiring, you have a hard date to move to the cloud. Perhaps your budget is quite limited. You just want to get the application into the cloud. The application is fit for purpose as is. You don't anticipate any significant changes to it or modifications to it. And from there you can just move it across and using the basic VMs. So moving then on to Refactor. So this is a very common one that we would experience within our customers. So you're making relatively minor modifications to the application internally, but one of the key changes you may make is to automate the build and deployment process. So using Devops techniques. So moving away from the manual build, having the reliance on a single person. If John the developer is on holidays for 2 weeks, something goes wrong, you actually don't have somebody else who can come along, redeploy the application, make a code change. By utilizing these processes, you're extracting those. You can get to the point where you've got a one-click compile and test and a one-click deploy to get the application to redeploy a new version of the application. So just moving on then. So just an example then of where we've done this relatively recently. 2020, there was a web app used nationally by a large NGO for a lot of their volunteers. Traditional web app architecture, single page application, set of RESTful APIs implemented with Angular front end, Java, Linux, and MongoDB. And it was also integrating with Salesforce APIs. So running locally in the data center, there's a manual deployment process and some key man dependencies in terms of support and update. So we took the application, we containerized it, we automated the build, compile, and test processes. So essentially, we were then able to, with one click, deploy the application into Azure. The applications, again, the front and back end applications, both deployed within containers. And then we replaced the on-prem MongoDB instance, which was managed by the client, with the equivalent managed instance in Azure, which is the Cosmo DB with the NoSQL interface. So benefits of this for the customer in this case: operational support costs reduced, scalability, availability, and monitoring were there and now available to them, whereas previously they were constrained with their hardware on-prem. Automated DevOps pipeline. But then again, the key ones that keep coming up, and I guess if you look at a lot of the presentations from the cloud providers, your Azures, your AWS's, Google's, there's a lot of emphasis on the technology, but something that we see on the ground very regularly are these key man dependencies and this tacit knowledge. And certainly one of the benefits by modernizing the apps is you can extract a lot of that. You can encode it by automating your build process. You're extracting a lot of that and de-risking a lot of that, the loss of a lot of that knowledge, frankly. So just moving on then, again, similar example, financial institution, set of, in this case, is web application, consumed by end users, a set of Spring RESTful services and a Java monolithic front end and SQL Server on-prem. So in this case, they had a hard date to migrate from their existing data centers, and then also they had a manual deployment process. So similar to with the NGO example, we containerized the application, got it running in Azure, removed the self-managed SQL servers and instead went with the PaaS offerings. So in this case, it was Azure SQL Server and automated deployment. One of the key requirements here also was around ensuring the security posture. So as the guys alluded to earlier, it's something we're seeing increasing with our customers from a compliance perspective. They're expected to show proof of how are you showing that your applications are secure. So again, by automating it, by bringing it to cloud, we were able to harden the servers and provide that functionality in an automated and a repeatable manner. So re-architecting then, so this is where you're coming along, you're actually making significant changes to your application. So you may have an existing large legacy app, you've invested man years or 10 man years in, tens of man years into it. It's doing a job for you, but you're constrained in certain places. So by re-architecting, you can decompose that application into a set of whether sub modules or sub microservices to allow you to take advantage and give more flexibility. It will also allow you to take advantage of more cloud native functionality. So maybe there's functionality like using serverless, using various PaaS services that weren't available, an option 10 years ago when the application was architected, that you can now take advantage of. So just moving on to rebuild, then we've got a couple of interesting examples of where we've done rebuild. So there's a rewrite of an existing application, basically take advantage of cloud native capabilities. So there may be challenges in terms of scalability, security, operational costs, maintainability. So by rebuilding and deploying, we can take advantage of the capabilities you're getting currently with the cloud, and from using whether it's cloud native, containerization, these various technologies to help you do things in a more responsive and cost-effective manner. Okay, and then so again, some of the drivers around this is one of the key drivers will often be around agility. So again, we continually see our customers, for them to keep up with the needs of the business, continually changing, where 5 years ago applications were more a system of records. It was something that maybe their direct employees used to look up a product or solve a follow-up on a sales order, and now increasingly you're needing self-serve, like as Dennis was shown earlier. Your end user, your customer, you need to give them direct channel access to your functionality. So that's something we're seeing often as a driver, where you may have a very rich app which is fit for purpose for dealing with your employers, with your employees, but now you want to build on top of that to make a public accessible app your end users can use, that's intuitive, that's scalable, that's responsive, and all that goes with that. So I mean, that's where rebuild can come in as a valid option. So Maxall here is an example of where we've done this. So we worked with Maxall and we walked through the number of workshops where they walked us through their existing estate of legacy applications. So applications working fine, successfully doing what they needed to do. However, the challenges were around accessibility. So in this particular case, we identified maybe just to put a bit more context around this. When we spoke to Maxall or worked through with them on this first, a challenge, and it's a common challenge you see across a number of customers. Well, where do I start? I've got an estate of 48 applications here. I can't move all of these to the cloud. So what do I do? So we worked with them to identify and go through their estate of applications, and then identify some quick wins. What were the applications where we could move them to the cloud, make some changes, and they could actually see some business value, and then demonstrate to the business, okay, here's the rationale for moving to the cloud. And then also, I suppose, de-risk or remove a lot of the unknowns. How will security work? Am I going to get a massive bill from Microsoft every month from this? It was just to take a lot of those unknowns and bring that concrete piece into it. So we took a slice of functionality and we built a web app then for them, which is used by their sales managers. Sales managers would be it would go out to the various forecourts. They could update information about assets about the various forecourt sites. They could do that through their phone, whereas before it was quite a long, laborious process. We're able to use Maxall's existing Azure Active Directory as their authentication means, and then integrate the data directly back into their existing legacy system. So benefits of that were high engagement users, simplified process for the users, and giving the business an opportunity to see both the challenges and the opportunities with migrating to the cloud, allow them to articulate better where they could go next and see where they could pull from there. So second example, is the Rebels bounty draw system. So Cork GA, they raise 7 figures every year through a set of monthly draws. Really high engagement right throughout the country. There's in the order of about 100 clubs involved. So they came to us. They had a legacy application on-prem. Really wasn't allowing them to give direct access to the users, a high reliance on manual process. Again, the common themes, I suppose, we've heard throughout the webinar here. So We worked with them, tried to understand where they wanted to go with this, what their challenges were, and we rebuilt the app to take advantage of the cloud native capabilities. From a technology perspective, we built out Angular front end, set of Spring APIs, and again managed Azure SQL Server database. Front end apps were containerized, and again, benefits of that: high user engagement, automation, and user self-service. And then some really startling ones over the last 12 months, or last 18 months, as COVID kicked in, revenue increased over 80%, and online payments increased by 135%. And again, a lot of this was facilitated, or wouldn't have been possible if they hadn't moved to the cloud and modernized their application. So I'm just conscious of time here. So just moving on then to replace. So really, this is quite self-explanatory in the sense that, you may have existing applications that you built 10 plus years ago, you rolled it yourself. At that time, there was nothing in the market to meet your needs. Oftentimes now there is. And when we engage with you, typically our philosophy is we try and push as much of the responsibility to third parties where you can. So, push the managing of your infrastructure to Azure. But if there's an application and you focus on managing your application or what's unique or differentiates you, if there's a current application in the cloud in the market which meets your needs, absolutely go with that as opposed to building your own. So just some key takeaways here. So understand the context and business drivers. Why do you want to move to the cloud? This is not technology led. Technology is really key here, but you need to look at the bigger picture and understand what are the business drivers for it. Big bang is not necessary. You've got a suite of legacy applications. You can take a slice of this. You can identify what's really going to be priority for me here to give evidence of success or address immediate burning fires you have. From that, then you can build a foundation to grow. You've built out your Azure space. From there, you can build and deploy other applications as required. Heightened UX experience is something I guess we're all seeing as from users, and again, you can flip that as an opportunity. Users are willing to embrace, they're willing to do work which would traditionally maybe done by your employees. So onboarding is something people want to do. They don't want to pick up the phone and have a 5-minute conversation or send back and forth emails. So use that as an opportunity to automate and give a better experience to users and to reduce burden within your own organization. Another one then that's again increasingly common. So within Ergo, we've a deep enough experience from a custom software perspective going back many years. We also do a lot of low code development using Microsoft's low code platform. Power Platform. So again, what we're increasingly seeing is you can leverage your existing applications, but take advantage then of the low code pieces to use some more emerging technologies while reducing your investment. Again, overall, there's lots of decisions and trade-offs to be considered here. It's not a one size fits all, and it may be a journey. Maybe you're taking a particular application, you lift and shift initially, and then you look at re-architecting, or you jump straight to rebuild. It's quite variable, so it's one to consider. It's individual per application, and just taking into the bigger context of both your technology and business perspectives. So really, with that, I'll just hand you over to Coleman to wrap up.
Thanks, Brendan. So just in summary, just a couple of key points around, why engaging with Ergo will help you on your journey. So if we look at, Dennis has mentioned it, Brendan has mentioned it, it's all about business-led and outcomes-based. So that's our mantra at Ergo. So what we want to make sure is that we can help customers overcome the sense of overwhelmedness at such a challenge. So we break it down. So we can support structure in the business case to reflect the division of work into multiple smaller waves of application migration. So, that will help ensure a more modest funding burn rate spread across multiple years if needs be. So you're using that business process value to prioritize candidate applications and the sequence of move. We'll always look to understand key processes first before talking technology. And I think Dennis alluded to it well. We need to understand your business. We need to become part of your business. We're not there to do a technical migration. It has to be future-proofed. It has to deliver to the goals and objectives of the organization. So we look at the problem statement, we look at a technology migration, project description, and then a cost-benefit analysis to underpin it. We've seen that the world has changed dramatically since the onset of COVID-19 pandemic. So in order to survive and thrive in that new environment, you need to evolve in response to it. So the digital tools and infrastructure are deploying and multiplying at a rapid pace. So we are well positioned to guide you through that. We will help you identify the key tools and trends that will help you maximize your business sales and productivity. So as a cloud partner, we're also very proud to be associated to Microsoft and be Partner of the Year for 2020. We're lucky enough to receive it 5 out of the last 10 years. We have been awarded Azure Migration Experts for modernization of web apps to Azure, Windows Server and SQL Server migrations, and cloud applications hosted on platforms such as Microsoft Azure can cut costs, improve productivity, and decrease that IT risk. So we pride ourselves on offering cloud applications to provide accessible pipeline to modernize, done in the right way. Our application capability, we can take you from soup to nuts. So we can do the initial advisory sessions right through to a managed service. We can lean into other elements of the Ergo business as required, be it Micromail, who do all the licensing, or our adoption and change management practice, which is becoming more and more prevalent over the last number of years. We've been doing it for 20 years. We've had success with spin-offs like Ergo and Flowforma, and we have the caliber there. We can take advantage of new available technology. So our employees are encouraged and rewarded to stay on a constant learning and upskilling path, ultimately to bring value to all of our customers. So we've been helping organizations build critical business applications for over 28 years, and our success is based on understanding that those unique business needs and optimizing applications to fit the market-specific demands. So with that then, before we move to a Q&A, and I see some questions have come in there, I'd just invite you to, at your leisure, respond to the feedback form, which is available in the Q&A feature here on Microsoft Teams. It'll also be shared in our follow-up email to all of you. And if you do so, we're pleased to offer you a 2-hour free application modernization workshop. So we'll have those initial conversations, and we're happy to offer that out to you today. So if I just have a look at Q&A, happy to take any questions that you have, and I think there might be some in there already. So let me just take a look.
Coleman, I have a quick question if I could throw it in.
Yeah.
So just one of the things I've noticed over the last, as a customer over the last 18 months with the pandemic, people are scrambling with their IT, obviously, to get people remote and use the opportunity to digitize. And from that, I imagine that a lot of the companies like yourselves are getting busier and busier. How is Ergo coping with that going forward, that drive in demand and uptake?
So it's probably twofold. So one, you may or may not have seen, but we've identified through our strategic planning with our customers over the past 12 or 18 months, and we took a real strategic initiative with our customers to reach out and take the opportunity to reach out during the pandemic to understand how they're doing, how they're coping. So John Purdy, who a lot of you might be familiar with as our CEO, personally reached out to a lot of our customers to understand the challenges they had, to see what assistance we could bring. And out of that, we understood where our customers needed to go, what help they needed. We put in place a strategy that underpin that around the resourcing. So we went out to the market and announced that we're hiring a large number of resources into the Ergo team to really come into our app modernization space across the board in terms of consultancy right through to technical. You can see that as Brendan demonstrated there around some of our customer use cases, we have the ability to deliver on a number of technical fronts, be it Microsoft or Java or open source. So we've gone out to the market to find best in breed, both Ireland and beyond, to come and join the Ergo team to really deliver and respond to those customer demands.
The other thing I'd add there, Coleman, would be, I guess, going back to early this year, as a management team, we took the view that we would see aggressive growth this year. And as a result, we've actually got quite an aggressive growth plan from a recruitment perspective, which is already activated. So just we are seeing that need, and we're responding to it by growing the team, which is so far so good.
It's good to hear. Thanks, guys.
Okay, Coleman, just to draw it out to you, I think the Q&A option is not being seen by some people, so just so you're aware.
Okay, there's I know there's a couple of questions that came in there by email. So one that I'll pose to you, Brendan, is around the business case. So the question that is how do I make the business case for app modernization?
So I guess it's about the motivators. It's trying to understand what are the motivators that you're ultimately the people who are signing the check need to see. What's what oftentimes it will come down to. So you're trying to understand what was that encourage them to spend on this, and what are the inhibitors. So typical things we would say would be security, cost, opportunity. So what opportunity are we losing out on by not doing this? What opportunities are we gaining by doing this? Operational costs, how do we maintain this application, and risk. So what is the risk with this current application, which is we've a single point of failure, for example, on that application. So it's oftentimes around building those pieces. One approach we've seen successful with a number of customers is taking a small bet. So just taking a relatively small application, maybe it's something that's non-critical, non-strategic, applying the process for one of the 5 hours or 4 hours, bringing that application into the cloud, allowing your application to learn, basically put their finger in the wound, allow them to, I suppose, reassure themselves around the advantages and risks associated with the cloud, and then that can strengthen the further business case then for the bigger piece, where you want to build out your roadmap for modernization over a number of years.
Okay, very good. And just on that, because I'm constantly being asked when I'm engaging with customers, is there's a fear around cost and it's spiraling out of control. And how do you approach that? So how do you control your cost if you do move to the cloud?
Yeah, it's a couple of things. First of all, you will be able to do a relatively accurate estimate of what your cost will be for deploying an application to the cloud. Just the calculators out there, etc., are good and solid. You can get a good sense of what the cost is. Also, from a control point of view, there's a lot of budgetary controls and alarms, etc., that you can build into your Azure now. So if your consumption's going over a certain amount for a certain service, you can set alarms and triggers so you can see all of that. And then also you can breaking down and seeing all the various costs is quite easy and quite straightforward. I was just watching a talk with the solution architect there a number of weeks ago, and he spoke. There's some German phrase, and it's along the lines of "even small animals create manure." And I think it's something that a lot of businesses have a paranoia about when it comes to the cloud. So it's all you're paying month by month for all these small services, but they all add up. So again, the functionality now in all the large cloud providers is quite good, in terms of managing it, predicting it, and estimating it, and putting in the alarms around it so you can see those controls and intervene as needed.
Okay, very good. Okay. There was one other question there that came in around DevOps, and it's probably a common conversation I have with customers who are new to all of this. They hear the terminology, they hear the buzzwords, they feel they should be doing something with it. Is it really necessary? And does it not add layers of complexity in upskilling and getting up to speed with it? That's a question from me on behalf of all the customers I've talked to over the last 12 or 18 months, So
Sure. So I suppose first, like DevOps means a lot of different things to different people, but I suppose where I'm coming from in this is your continuous delivery, continuous deployment, continuous integration, essentially automating the process of compiling, testing, packaging, deploying your software. So if we take that as what we mean by DevOps, it's certainly a different mindset. You are going from, traditionally, your developer came along, built your application, compiled it, did their testing on their machine, and then took the produced artifacts or files and SSH'd onto the relevant application, relevant server, copied the files across, made the configuration changes, and there's a certain comfort with that in one sense because it's direct control and you can get in there with the continuous delivery. Continuous automation where you're coming along and you're actually taking those steps away. So instead of all of those pieces happening, a developer can come along, make a code change that essentially triggers a build onto your test server, so you can essentially run your test. You can see if the application is still functioning as expected, and then you come along and you can deploy it.
Okay.
So I think DevOps simplifies a lot of that in a lot of cases. It's not like for lift and shift, for example, it's not something that's necessary. I'd say one area where it is quite real now is around compliance and security. So everybody talks agile and building new functionality every 2-3 weeks, but how do you do that in a secure way? And how do you ensure that when you're deploying a new application, you're not introducing new vulnerabilities or various other security flaws in your application? So by automating that process, you can build those pieces in, which is again quite relevant to the business.
Okay, very good. Thanks for that. Just looking at the time there. So just before I wrap up, I'd encourage you all to, if you can, complete the feedback, avail of the workshop, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to your account manager if you have one, or please feel free to reach out to one of the contact methods there on your screen. So I want to thank everybody for attending the session this morning. I want to particularly thank Dennis for taking some time out. Time's important for everybody at the moment, so really appreciate that, Dennis. Thanks very much. Likewise, Brendan. And with that, I'll close it out and wish you all a good day, and thank you very much for attending. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.